Today I'm here at Florida Commercial Diving Institute in Hudson, Florida. I'll be interviewing Sid. We'll be talking all about the commercial diving industry, how to get into it, the program that he has, and the money that you can make. So my name is Carson DeFelice, and this is Behind the Job. Hi, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell me what you do?
Carson, my name is Sid Prescott. I'm one of the owners of Florida Commercial Diving Institute here. We're a training and certification facility for the commercial diving industry.
And how long have you been in this industry for?
Well, I've been in it for a while. I started in it officially back in 1973. Hasn't been continuous. There was a little break here and there in it, but that's where it began back in 1972, 73.
So in the 70s, when you started working in the diving industry, what kind of work were you doing back then and even till now?
Well, I had a friend of mine when I was in high school. We were talking one day, and he told me about a cousin he had in New Orleans that was a commercial diver. And I had never heard the term. I had no concept of what is a commercial diver. And found out pretty quickly. And it was something that appealed to me, and found out that back then there was a dive school out in Los Angeles. I made my way out there, went to the school, was actually hired directly on graduation from that school by a large commercial diving company. Went to Singapore, started off my diving career out of there in Southeast Asia.
What type of work were you doing diving?
Well, that initial job was actually on a drill ship in the Gulf of Thailand. They were drilling in 250 feet of water off of Thailand and Vietnam. And we were providing dive support to the drilling operations.
So dive support, okay.
Yeah.
Take me through then the next decade, the decades after that. Mm-hmm. What other jobs were you doing?
Well, I spent some time over there, and then I had information that came to me about the Gulf of Mexico diving industry. And I came back to the States, found myself down in southern Louisiana looking for a job, and started off there in the Gulf of Mexico, which is pretty much back at that time, it was like the Wild Wild West. The companies were engaged in exploration and production of oil and gas in the Gulf of Mexico. It was all still relatively new back then, but there was a tremendous amount of work in the Gulf. You had companies with pipe lay barges, heavy lift crane barges, massive amount of work that was going on developing and constructing the infrastructure that's in the Gulf of Mexico that produces oil and gas for the nation. And divers are an integral part of that. Without the capability of divers doing the work underwater, there would be no offshore oil and gas production.
Explain to me what a diver does. Obviously, there's many different jobs you can do as a diver. Mm-hmm. What are the main, you have underwater welding. I feel like that's the main thing that people think of when they see divers. What else?
Yeah, that's something and that's kind of a misperception in the industry actually, because underwater welding is certainly a part of it, but as a whole, it's a small percentage of the work. What do divers do? There's a million different answers to that question. Underwater construction, inspections, maintenance, repairs of all types, and it's a million answers to that question. They could be working on flanging up a pipeline on the seabed. They could be doing a repair. Let's say a ship drug an anchor through a pipeline, or repair on one of the offshore installations. 1,000 different jobs that divers are called on to do every day.
Wow. Talk me through what your institute does. What kind of programs do your students do?
Well, one thing to understand, worldwide today, commercial diving companies require training and certification for employment. That's what we provide to the industry. We provide the training and the certification so that our graduates are qualified to go to work in the commercial diving industry.
What are the most common jobs that they go for?
There's basically, as we were talking before, if you divide it up into three geographical areas, you have your foreign companies located out of the United States. Most of that work is associated with offshore oil and gas work. You have your companies in the Gulf of Mexico, offshore oil and gas work mostly. And then inland across the country, there are multitudes of diving companies that are engaged in underwater construction. It could be bridges, it could be pipelines, it could be dams, reservoirs, even municipal water tanks require maintenance and repair up in the water tanks. there's even companies that specialize in maintenance and repair inside nuclear reactors.
Wow.
So yeah, of course it's done safely and everything, but you'd never think of a diver going actually inside a nuclear reactor, but they do it.
Right.
There's actually a company here in Florida that has expertise in that.
I guess we'll get at this right away because I feel like when people think of diving, underwater welding, the services of all the the parts that you mentioned, what can a diver make?
We had a student stop by here a month or so ago, 1 year out of dive school, and he just happened to be in the area, came in, and he's 21 years old. He made $140,000 first year out of dive school. So this industry affords a huge amount of financial opportunity. Now this is entry level. Someone with no skills at all can start anywhere in the $20 an hour range. Keep in mind that's going to be probably on a 12-hour day with per diem and everything added into it, all the way up to we have companies right now offering $55 an hour right out of dive school.
Right out of dive school?
Yes.
55 an hour?
Yeah, yeah. So that's entry level. So it goes from there, in the Gulf of Mexico. Once you leave dive school, by and large, you're not expected to be a commercial diver because you're going to work for a company and you've got to learn the work that particular company is doing. So there's like an apprenticeship period where you're learning the jobs that company's doing. We can't train for those type of jobs. So you have that learning curve to go through, and they will dive you during this apprenticeship period. And then the day will come when you have enough experience and they decide that you're ready. They'll do what they call breaking you out, and you'll advance to actually being on the dive roster. And that becomes your full-time job, basically. Basic tuition with us is round figures. Our base tuition is $28,900. And for that amount of money to get into this industry with the financial rewards it offers, I don't know where else you can do that.
Plus the connections and
yes,
job opportunities.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier that people come to you, jobs come to you.
Oh yeah, we have companies on almost a daily basis. The phone rings, it's a dive company calling us, do we have anybody available? The companies right now they're struggling to actually find qualified people to man the jobs that they have. So yeah, there's a huge demand right now. Generally our graduates have jobs lined up before we graduate them. So 1 week recently, we had representatives from 3 companies that visited us, soliciting our students for employment, upon graduation. So just tremendous opportunity in this business, not only for the financial rewards, but also for the lifestyle. This is not a 9-to-5 job. There's a lot of travel. You can basically see the world and the companies pay for it. You can work with our certification, which is recognized internationally. You're not limited to wherever you want to go to work worldwide. So, and once you get established in this industry with companies, especially the overseas companies, they don't care where you live. They just call you up and say, hey, we need you over here Thursday, plane ticket at the airport. Give us a call when you get there. So lots of financial reward, lots of reward as a personal lifestyle. There's a lot of freedom on how you work, where you work, when you work, how much you want to work. I advise guys, hit it hard and, You'll
see the reward.
Yes, no doubt.
For a person that's hearing this and they're like, wow, like how do I get started? What is the training like from, let's say you're right out of high school, you want to get into this trade. What do you recommend them do?
Enroll with us.
Figured you'd say that.
Yeah, come see us. We'll get you started. We get the ball rolling. Like I say, we do 26 weeks of training. The first part of that training is in a classroom with all the dive physics and all of that. And then once that's over with, you're out on dive station every day. And as you can see, we do as much real world training as possible to give you real hands-on training of what to expect. When you leave us and you go to work for companies, this is as real as it can get in the water. We have a pipeline project, a boat salvage project, the underwater welding, cutting steel underwater. We're the only facility in the world that offers an advanced course in cutting steel underwater with a certification. So we've raised the bar quite a bit, and we continue to raise the bar in our training, real world training, with an emphasis on safety.
Let's say somebody wants to get into this and they're thinking, what exactly do I need to have to hop on these companies and start working?
Well, for our training, we have two prerequisites, and one is to undergo a dive physical by a hyperbaric qualified medicine doctor. He just does a physical exam, signs you off that you're fit to dive. That's the main prerequisite that we have. You don't really have to have any prior diving experience or even welding experience. We train and do all of that in-house while you're here.
How about age-wise too? You know, you have the 18-year-olds and then you have up to 56-year-olds.
Yeah, this is something also that's a misconception. And I get calls very frequently with somebody will say, well, it's so hard on your body, you can't do it after you're 35 years old. Totally untrue. Once you leave us, you go to work for a commercial dive company, they require you to have an annual physical. And as long as you can pass that annual dive physical, you can keep diving. I had friends of mine still diving with 68 years old, still doing it, still in the water because they love doing it and it gets in your blood, and they were still capable of passing the dive physical. But usually, at some point way before that, they will progress to maybe become a dive supervisor or something like that. So.
And those are well paying too, right?
Extremely well paying for a dive supervisor. Yep. You decide, okay, your diving days are over. You want to do something different. You've got the experience. You sit and take the exam for a dive supervisor, and every dive job requires a qualified dive supervisor to be running it. And very, very high rates of pay for qualified dive supervisors and huge demand also.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Take me through a normal day of a student here.
Well, after you get out of the classroom, we start at 0700 in the morning. First thing is we'll do a job hazard analysis, job safety meeting, go through all of that, and the dive supervisor will set the diving roster for the day, whatever we're going to be doing for training. And every day is different, and whatever training tasks that we're doing in the pond, and you'll be on the roster, and we go through a rotation. We usually dive 2 divers together in the water to maximize the amount of in-water bottom time that you get while you're here with us. And it could be anything from working on the boat salvage over there, to working on the pipeline, to maybe we train to 165 feet of water here. Doing your deep dives, we have a dive profile that we have to follow every day. So every day is different. Every day is something new, and we vary it as much as possible. And we want everybody in the water at least once every day. And we want them to accumulate as much in-water time, training time as possible during the time that they're with us.
You briefly touched on safety.
Mm-hmm.
And the danger that could be in this trade. Everybody talks about that in diving. Can you talk about that?
Sure.
How dangerous is it?
Yeah, when I got into business early on, there was this huge gold rush, so to speak, for offshore petroleum production. And pretty much anything went back then. There was little to nothing in the regulatory side of things then. It all came down to the culture of the company you were working with, to the degree of safety. And in the early days, there were accidents because of that just go get it done culture, There was also a glaring lack of training back then. There was only one facility out in California at that time.
That was everywhere though. I mean, when did OSHA start? In the 70s, right?
OSHA doesn't have a lot in the way of standards for commercial diving. There's a little bit there, but there's not a lot. But as the years went past, the industry got more organized. It became more safety conscious, and there were organizations that came along that established minimum training standards, and that's progressed to today to a very, very high level. So from the Wild Wild West days today is really night and day difference.
What's the deepest dive you've been on for work?
The deepest in my experience was 1982. We did some deep dives for Norway. The deepest was 1,200 feet. So those were proving dives to prove capability for the Norwegian government. Norway had access to the North Sea oil back at that time, but they didn't have any way to get it ashore because of the Norwegian Trench. And it was required to lay a 36-inch pipeline into Norway. Back then, that had never been done. Commercially, working dives had never been done to that depth. So we did it. And Norway became a wealthy country.
You can't go past 1,000 feet now, right?
Well, we found that back then, for a lot of reasons, we used existing off-the-shelf commercial diving equipment, and it really wasn't designed to be at those depths. There were problems with the amount of gas flow and everything through the umbilicals and everything else. There was problems. There were also some physical limitation problems at working at that depth. As a consequence, generally, the maximum working depth has been shallowed up to today. You probably won't see anything over 1,000 feet anymore on the commercial side of things. The expense of it is horrendous. You're using helium gas, a lot of very highly trained people. So in the commercial side of the diving industry, what's normal today is anything down close to 1,000. What's routine today is 400, 500, 600 feet. That's every day diving work conducted as we're sitting right here. There's multiple jobs going on around the world at those depths.
Take me through what that's like being at that depth. Obviously, you can't just jump down there and get sent down. You have to work your way down there, right?
Well, at those depths, you're doing what's called saturation diving. And to keep it simple, as we sit here, our bodies are saturated with the gas in the atmosphere at atmospheric pressure. As you go in the water, or if you're in a chamber and the pressure is increased, your body is like a sponge. It's going to start uptaking more and more gas. And then when you go under this pressure, when you stop, your body's going to continue absorbing that gas in your tissues for about 12 hours. At about the 12-hour point, it reaches equilibrium. It's not going to absorb any more gas at that depth. So then you're saturated. Saturation diving is, if you look at the space station with those guys living in the space station, saturation diving is very similar, except it uses still living chambers where the divers they're not in the water, they're not on the seabed, they're kept on the vessel, but inside the chamber they're pressurized to whatever the bottom depth is. And then the work is carried out by the divers transferring out of the living chamber under pressure into a diving bell. Then the bell is separated off the living chamber. It's lowered down, stopped about 20 feet off bottom. You open your bottom hatch, get in your gear, plug your hot water in, because you have to have hot water because you're breathing helium gas. And usually seawater temp at those depths, especially in the North Sea, is about 1 degree above freezing. And you drop down to the bottom and you go do your work. Bell run usually lasts about 8 hours, 2 divers. And at the end of the 8-hour, 7 or 8 hour period, that bell is brought back to the surface. Divers transferred back in the living chamber. 2 more divers go in and they go do their 8 hours. So you can do 3 8-hour bell runs. You can work around the clock, 24 hours, weather permitting, no decompression required until the job is over. And then the chamber is decompressed, brought back to the surface. Decompression times are very lengthy. It's usually a 24-hour day of decompression, basically for every 100 feet of depth. So a 500-foot saturation dive, it's probably going to be at least 6 days of decompression.
Are you getting paid for that?
Oh,
though?
yeah. Oh,
Awesome.
yeah,
Well,
you get paid.
Can't be that
But
bad.
during decompression, you're really not doing anything. The chamber's vented off extremely slowly where the pressure is released. So you're listening to music, reading, waiting for the next meal, which come every 6 hours, and just killing time until the decompression is over.
What does your body feel like during those decompression states?
It should be pretty much normal.
Okay, good.
You don't really feel it. I used to have a watch. It was a Bulova Accutron, And the helium gas has very tiny molecules. And under pressure and saturation, that helium gas would penetrate the watch case. And it was pretty common that while you're decompressing after the first day or two, that crystal would just pop off of it because the gas inside it couldn't escape quick enough, and it would pop the bezel off.
Wow.
So you know something's changing. But as far as your body, you shouldn't feel anything, really.
How about when you're down there at 1,000 feet?
Well, that's a different story. At those extreme depths, when we did those deep dives, personally, I noticed a difference when we passed 700 feet. I really started noticing differences, and your body starts becoming, for me personally, you have a sense that you're fragile. You know, your bones, I use the description like your bones are like glass. I didn't really think I wanted to make any quick moves or anything like that. Everything is deliberate. Not that they're not, but you have that feeling. One of the things that we ran into was the temperature control inside the living chamber. We found that there was 3 degrees of temperature that they had to maintain. If it went above, you were sweating uncomfortably hot. If it went below that 3-degree band, you were uncomfortably cold. So there was a very narrow margin because you're in helium gas, and helium conducts heat just like copper conducts electricity. So that was one thing. Communication, verbally talking, your speech becomes very, very distorted. They build special radios called helium unscramblers because you're talking like Donald Duck, and you know how that is on the surface at a birthday party. Well, when you go under pressure, it gets worse and worse and worse. The deeper you go, it gets more and more and more distorted. At 1,200 feet, very, very difficult to communicate, even with another person in the chamber. And of course, talking to them on the surface, they have special radios called helium unscramblers that have to be used to take that distortion out of your speech. When you're doing something like that, this industry it has a lot of uniqueness to it. You're doing a job that not many people in the world can do. You know, it's not for everybody. It takes somebody that has an ability to figure out things on their own, to think on their own, willing to do sometimes very uncomfortable work, you know, and it has a balance of both. You know, it's not all down in the Caribbean with 100 feet of visibility on a white sand bottom.
You're in some mucky water sometimes, right?
Sometimes, and it's the old saying, you've got to take the bad with the good, but it balances out. But there's a lot of different job opportunities in it, like we have graduates of ours working in Orlando with SeaWorld, doing science, marine biology, things like that. It's not all just offshore oil and gas work, which is, and a lot of times not what people think it is. Mm-hmm. You know, you're not, the fact of the matter is, usually when they're drilling, they normally don't have divers aboard because they've got everything so down to an exact science today. Only if something goes wrong will they call out a dive company. And usually the dive company won't fly out to the rig. They'll come out on a dive support vessel. They'll pull up next to the rig, and the divers come off of their vessel and over and do whatever work or repair or maintenance has to be done underneath.
So you kind of were alluding to the type of person you need to be. You need to be mentally and physically strong. There's no doubt about it. You can't. Those two are non-negotiable.
Yeah.
What else do you have to be?
Well, willing to work, you know, because that's what it is. This is working underwater. You've got to have that motivation to get in and get things done, and sometimes in conditions that might not be as pleasant as you want them to be, but you know, it's just part of it. And today, the level of safety with the companies across the board is at a very high level. Everything is looked at very critically on how it's going to be done with safety in mind. So, you know, we have the highway out here. You can probably hear the cars going past. For me, it's more hazardous pulling out the gate on that highway than it is working underwater. because we're mitigating, whatever hazards there might be to the best extent we can. This equipment has multiple backups on air supply and redundancies built into it. We have standby divers on deck, very highly trained dive supervisors, backup on top of backup on breathing air, breathing gas supplies. There's a lot of redundancy and safety that's built into all of this equipment and the way the work is conducted today.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's all relative.
It is. And like I say, our standard is professionalism. We're endeavoring to inculcate that mental ability to think and work professionally, which translates into safety.
Yeah. I mean, and you can't be slacking off down there when the company's. What can a saturation diver be making per hour?
Well, I was just told that over in the North Sea, which mostly is all saturation diving because of the extreme depths they're working in, North Sea rates for saturation, my understanding, is between $4,000 and $5,000 a day. And they do
Really?
a 28-day sat, which working in that 28 days, the first day is compression, although you could make a bell run on your first day in sat. And then at the end of it, you've got to back out your decompression days. Could be 5 or 6 or 8 days when you're decompression, because they want you on surface on day 28. So what is your actual working days in there? And the North Sea, even at the best of times in the summer, has some pretty horrendous weather. Divers don't dive when the dive supervisor or divers deem it's unsafe to be diving. So you're making $130,000, $40,000 for not a whole lot of working days in that 28 probably.
You can work 1 month a year and have a nice house, nice boat,
Yeah,
nice car.
you could. See, when I was doing it over there were no limitations, none at all. And we would go into saturation as quickly when we got on board the vessel. First thing we wanted to do was get in the tank, get into saturation, and stay as long as possible. I did a 103-day stretch one time, reached surface, was out on the deck for about 3 hours, went right back in for another 20-some days. So it's a matter of acclimation. I found that once you get into sat, it takes you about a day or two to get acclimated. Then you get into a routine of what's going on. And most of the work that we did over there was for BP, British Petroleum. And they were really good to us because they're paying your paycheck. And the divers are paid for days in saturation and usually for depth. So if we shut down for weather over in the North Sea, you could be down for a day, or very likely you're going to be down for 4 or 5 days, maybe a week. Well, it's just too rough to be diving. Well, they would not start decompressing us. They would leave us at depth, which we like because it maximized our pay. But there are companies that as soon as the job shuts down for weather, they'll start decompressing the divers. Remember, it's going to take days, but every foot of decompression you do is money you lose. But BP took care of us. They would leave us alone, which made us happy. Just leave us alone. If we're going to decompress, it gets to be a mental thing. Once you get into the routine in there, you want to be left alone, And if they tell us, okay, we're going to start decompressing the unit, fine. Let's go all the way to the surface, because it's a mental thing. You get in your head, okay, we're decompressing. Don't stop when the weather gets good and blow us back down. Just leave us alone at depth. And BP was good about that.
Yeah.
Made us happy.
And have you noticed any ill health effects from it? Everybody talks about, life expectancies like 60 or 70 in this trade, but
no. Generally speaking, again, it's an individual. Everybody's different. The level of safety today is at a very, very high level. The companies, first and foremost, are interested in safety. Certainly our interest here, provably so, with our safety record here. And that's what we put first and foremost, is how to do this as safely as possible. Again, it affords somebody with, our training is 26 weeks long, 5 days a week. The tuition, in the scheme of things, is a bargain for what you get out of it. And the possibilities of actually getting into something that is definitely has the benefit of being life-changing as far as where you live, type of work you're doing. It's just an infinite variety of, where you want to work, what type of work you want to do, and all of that type of thing.
Yeah, this definitely takes, not every day is the same, to a whole nother level.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Like I said, it's not a 9-to-5 job by any means. Um, travel, a lot of travel, because when you go to work for a diving company, that's not where you're going to be working, where they're located. They send you out anywhere in the world where the jobs are. You have inland companies, like here in the Tampa area. There's a number of inland dive companies that do work around Florida, some out-of-state work, things like that. But those companies are generally where guys are working where they want to be home at night more with family and things of that nature, versus the offshore oil and gas industry where the work is offshore. Could be 100 miles, 200 miles, 300 miles offshore. Could be for extended periods of time. Although even on jobs that are ongoing, you could be sent out on a very simple job. You might have to just go out there and do one dive, open a valve, close a valve, go down and look at something, and you're back to a project that maybe is going to be 3 months long. And they're working every single day and night out there, weather permitting. So in long-term jobs like that, they'll set up a rotation so that you're not out there for, you can stay if you'd like, but for guys that are out there for a period of time, they need a break, come in or take care of business, whatever, they afford you that opportunity.
So if you could go back 2025, not in the 70s, different time, what would you do differently, and what would you do out of high school? Let's say you just graduated high school. You know that diving is what you want to do. What route would you go? You'd go to the school, I'm guessing you'd say.
You have to get training and certification prior to employment. We qualify you for employment in the industry. So that is the first step. And then decide which company you'd like to go to work for. What type of work do you want to be doing? Do you want to be working in Delaware or Illinois or New Jersey or Alaska or California or wherever? You pick it. Do you want to be offshore oil and gas industry? That's going to be a company in southern Louisiana, Morgan City, Houma, those places, Lafayette. Or do you want to go to work overseas someplace with foreign companies? So it's just a lot of different opportunity. Takes about a year to find your feet, decide the type of companies you want to work for, type of work they're doing, that type of thing.
What advice would you have to those people out there looking to get in this trade?
Come see us. We'll get the ball rolling for you.
Oh yeah.
And we work with companies all the time, and we do direct our students. When we have companies that call us, we let them know where the jobs are on a day-to-day basis, things of that nature. And then once you graduate, go to work. Keep your head down, work hard, and you'll be happy with the rewards you get out of it. Yeah, and there's a lot of satisfaction that comes to doing this type of work. You're doing things that a very small percentage of the population will do, and there's a lot of satisfaction in that. When you can go down there and weld a pipeline on the bottom, and X-ray it, and you've got 100% quality weld done on the seabed, or you go down and use the tools that we train you for cutting steel underwater. It gives you a lot of satisfaction to be able to do something that not many people have done that. When you turn around and look behind you and you see your footprints on the seabed someplace that nobody's ever been before, it's got to be the same feeling you'd get if you were on the moon or someplace. It's the same thing. Yeah, you're doing stuff in places that people have never done it before. So you get a lot of pride and satisfaction in being able to do something like that, and get paid well for it.
Very well. Yeah. Sounds like.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about your school or the trade, the industry itself?
Well, I think it's an industry that very little is known about it in the general public, what commercial divers do. A lot of misconceptions. We've tried to dispel some of those here, I think, and as to what the reality is. For somebody starting out of high school or later in life, like I mentioned, the other gentleman's 54 years old when he went through the school with his son here and had a total career change. That was about 6 years ago, and he's still working today in the industry. Loves it. So even, from somebody 18 to somebody in their 50s, you still can do this job and get a lot of satisfaction out of it. We can provide that for you. We're here to make it happen. We take an interest in each and every one of our students. We do a lot of one-on-one instructions here. And the difference, is paying forward our experience, to our students to make them the best that we possibly can. That's what we're all about.
What's your ratio between instructor to student?
Well, right now we have two main instructors, and the ratio is very low. It's like 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 or something.
Beautiful.
And in the past, we did do some large classes. We're not doing that anymore. We found that it really detracts from the quality of instruction. So we're keeping the class sizes much, much smaller now. And because we're dedicated to maintaining the highest level of training that we possibly can provide.
That's great.
So we've achieved it, and we're dedicated to maintaining that.
I want to give a big thank you to Sid and Florida Commercial Diving Institute for wanting to do this. Thank you to all who watched, and if you or anyone else wants to be a part of this podcast, my email is in the description below. Thank you.